Welcome CSC230, Website Design and Development, to ex2, Lists and Links CSS. Now we're still going to call it ex1 in our heading here, but this will be ex2 because we'll be adding the CSS. And this is kind of a finished product. It may not look exactly like this. I'm going to kind of do it from scratch, so I'll try to get as close as I can to something like this, to this sample. And you can see I used colors that are in the picture here, this header image, and I pulled some greens out of there. I pulled a blue from the bottom to kind of balance off with the blue sky, and used some kind of, natural earthy kind of colors in the middle. A little darker on the background, a little lighter here in kind of the main body area or our section area. And also take note that this thing centers within the page. If it gets too small, it gets covered up, but if it's on a large screen, it stays in the middle of the page. And it doesn't mean we're always going to lay out web pages like that, but we're going to try this out and explore some CSS, just some little bits here and there, not a whole lot, just some margins, some fonts, some spacing, some alignment, some things like that we're going to work with. So this will kind of be the finished product. Now, just so you understand what's happening if we didn't have CSS, here's the styles.css file that we're going to make. Now, as far as what we put in here, we're just going to have a couple selectors, HTML, body, section, H1, H2, the lists, ordered list, unordered list, and then we'll pick out a couple things just to modify it slightly. But if you didn't have this file, or for whatever reason, if you went to your index file, now the index file is basically pointing to the CSS file. So if you just, even if I did this, if I just called it style.css, which doesn't exist, I can save it, and then when I go back to this page and I refresh it, it's just going to go back to the generic HTML that we had, and even to the point where I took out this width of 800 pixels here. We're going to put that back, but we're going to put it in the CSS file. But this is the default of everything HTML. This is generic HTML here, and it has big bold headings. It has space in between paragraphs, all that kind of stuff there. It has indented bullet lists, all that kind of stuff. There's even a little margin on the page, maybe 4 to 6 pixels. I forget exactly if it's 6 or 4, but something like that around the edge. So resets will get rid of all of that, so you're not kind of mixing some of your custom stuff with some of that. But that's the way it's going to look when we start from your first exercise that you worked on, and then we're going to make it look like this. And again, I just have to put the S there and save it, the index file, and then just refresh this, and then it should link up again and do something like this. So this is what we're going to try to do. Just do something like this. It'll probably take a couple videos to do, so I imagine this will be part 1. So I'm going to get started right from scratch, so let me do that in a second. And welcome back to the fall 2022 version of ex2 Lists and Links. This is the CSS portion, and I'm going to do this new with the fall version that I was working on. And I just want to point out something, that I'm at the home area of Replit right now, and I'm seeing my CSC230 W1. If you go to My Repels, I'm not seeing that for some reason. It's showing when I go to home, it's not showing that one. It's only showing things inside the older folder. So it's just one of those things with Replit. I'll have to find out why I'm not seeing all of them here. But when I go home, I do see it. So there's the one I'm working on. So I'll go here. And something else I want to point out, if you ever, click on this for whatever reason, you're like, wow, how do I get that back? And you're going here and you're saying split left and doing all of this stuff, and you're like, wait, that's not what I want. How do I get that preview back? Just go to Run, and it'll automatically open that up, and they call it Web View when you do that. So if you X out of that, it'll go away. If you hit Run, it'll come back. Now remember, whenever you hit Run, it's always going to show you the main index page. It will not show you index pages inside of folders, and we're going to be working in there. So that's why we're making this page with links that we already have. So this is the fall 2022 version, and what I'm going to do first is get rid of this style CSS. That's in the main directory, and we're going to create a styles inside of ex1. So I'm going to get rid of this, and I'll just hit delete. It'll ask if I want to delete it, and I'm going to delete it. And we're going to make a CSS file. Now, if I go back into ex1 now, we have full header and we have our index page, and this is what we worked on last time. And we did some inline CSS, meaning we put this stuff, this is the inline CSS right here. Style equals width 800, all of that, that's inline CSS. We're putting them inside HTML tags as an attribute. And we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to take that out. And I think we did it up here too with background color bisque. And maybe I'll put bisque as my HTML color and something else as the body color. So we're going to work with that a little bit, and we're also going to link to a style sheet. Now this in here, if you happen to have this here, I'm going to wipe this out and we'll put it in new. And you might not have it at all, so we're going to put it new. So I'm going to take that out so we can show how to put it in. And remember, when you want this in a new tab, go over here to open it in a new tab. And there it is. It looks really small. Let me do Command 0. And I'll go List and Links. There it is. And I didn't update these yet, so it still has Homeland, Dexter, and Cardinal. I had watched some new shows this this summer and this fall, so I'll leave those there for now. But this is the page that we're going to be working on. And if I come back here, what we're going to do is create a CSS file and start building the CSS into an external file. And to learn more about CSS, I'm going to go to W3 Schools. We'll check this out, W3 Schools. And I'll just go to the main page. And I'll go to Tutorials, and I'll go to Learn CSS. And this is the CSS tutorial, and it has some examples here. I'll go to Introduction, what is CSS, all this kind of stuff here. You could read through that. I'll go to Syntax. This is what you really want to look at. And we're going to create syntax with a selector, which could be an HTML tag. It could also be an ID name or a class name, but it could be an HTML name. So right now this is an H1, and it's showing the curly braces, it's showing the property, it's showing the value, it ends with a semicolon, it has a colon in between, and it has a space here, although we're going to put these on separate lines. So after the semicolon, we'll put these on separate lines. It'll look more like this. Here's a P selector, here's the curly braces, here's color, colon, red, text align, colon, space, center, and you don't need a space here. In here, this area here, you don't have to have a space there. If you go into the try it yourself, I'll just jump in here real quick. You don't need a space over here. You could take this out, and I'll run this. And, you know, just for example, I could put blue here and run it. And this try yourself is a nice area to just kind of try out things. But keep in mind, this is what it's going to look like. And this is internal style, meaning it's in the HTML page. It's not in the tags itself, but it's in the page. But we're going to do this stuff as a separate file. So we're going to not work in the page itself. Now, it's easier for W3 Schools to have it all together so you can see it once. They can't link to an external style and then show everything, but we're going to do that. So getting back to here, remember, we have our selector, which could be the tag. It could be an ID name, class name. Then we're going to have curly braces. Then we're going to have property value. Just like in HTML, how we have attribute and value, we're going to have a property and value, and they're separated by a colon. And then after each one, we're going to have a semicolon. You could have as many as you want. And then it always finishes up with the semicolon, and it'll look like this. And we'll indent it like that, and everything will look like that. So we're going to do that, and the whole thing is called a declaration. This is a declaration for P. Sometimes we just call it style. We say, oh, there's two styles in there, and this is the style for P. So we'll use those terms, style, because they are cascading style sheets. Let's go work in our ex1 again. So we're going to go back here to our code, and we're going to create a style sheet inside here. So I'm going to go on to ex1, and I'm going to add a file. And I'm going to call it styles. I know it created one called style, but I'm going to call it styles.css. And there it is. There's nothing in here. And I'm just going to put a / and an asterisk. And then put, this is my style sheet. And then I'll put in */ And now it shows up in this kind of green color. So it's / asterisk and then */. So this is a comment, and you can use a shortcut to do that as well. I think it's command /. I'll show you how to do that. But we're going to create some styles here for our sheet. Now, before we do that, we have to link to this. So we have to tell our index file to use this. Now, how do we do that? We could go into here, and I already have a space here because I had it and I deleted it, but I'm going to put link. I'm going to use the Emmet shortcut. I'll put link and then just hit tab. And it's making link rel equals style sheet ref. And I just want to point out, when you use your syntax, they have like a how-to, and they talk about the ways to insert CSS. Now we're using an external style sheet, external CSS. So external will have a link to the style sheet. we already used inline, which is inside the tag itself, and the other one is internal, which they'll use sometimes in the try it area where they'll just kind of put it inside style tags in the head tag. But we're going to use the external one like this. So it'll say link rel style sheet, and then for the hyperlink reference, we're going to put the name of the style sheet. So that's what we're going to do up here. So we have the style sheet, and we're going to put styles.css. Now, if you called it style, put style in there, but we're going to call it styles because that's what I have. So I'm going to put in styles.css. Now, it's not going to do anything yet, but it's at least working. And once we put some styles in there, it should work okay. So let's try some styles that we used in here. Now, I'm going to take this out of here. Background color bisque. I'm going to take this out of here, and I'm just going to cut it. So on Windows, do Control X. I'm going to do Command X. I'm going to get rid of that, and then I'll get rid of this whole style. And then I'll go to my styles, and I'm just going to put body space, and I'll put the curly braces, and then I'm going to paste it in here. So there's the declaration inside the braces here, inside these brackets, these curly braces. So this is the declaration inside the declaration block, and it has background color bisque. And let's see if it works. Again, opening, closing curly brace. We have the semicolon ending it right here. We have bisque, and we could click on here and change it if you want, but I'll leave it like that for now. And you don't have to hit run, so I'm just going to go here and refresh it. And it doesn't look any different. That's because we did the same thing, but we did it through the style sheet. And if I go back to my index page and I delete this width equals 800 pix, I'll just delete this whole style out of here. And I won't cut it. I'll just delete it for now. If I go back here and refresh, you can see now it wiped out the width, and now this paragraph is extending. So if we wanted to shorten that again, we could go in here to our style sheet, and for body, we could just put width, colon, 800 px, no space. It's 800 pix altogether, and then a semicolon. And let's just see what this looks like. And that's the way it started. So we just went back to the way we were. So everything's okay now, but we have it in an external style sheet. We have body. And we could also do something. I'm going to go here, and I'll put a space, and I'll put HTML, opening, closing curly brace. And I'm going to put a background color. I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to wipe this out. And I'll start typing antique white. Now that's a little lighter. And let's just see what this looks like. I'll refresh it. And you can see that looks a little lighter. This is a little darker. I actually like the idea of having it darker on the outside and deeper color on the inside. So let's try that. We'll make this antique white, antique, and I'll select it. And I'll make this bisque. And we could always change it later. No big deal. So the HTML, the overall, is a little darker, and the inside is lighter. So I'm going to do that for now. Now, we're going to center this, and we're going to put some margin on either side. So we're going to do that next. Now, that's actually going to be for body. So we have an 800 pixel width on here, but we're going to put an even amount of margin on either side. And to do that, we're going to do something called margin auto. So let's go in here and put margin. And we can just highlight margin. And it actually put the colon and the semicolon. And I'm just going to put auto. I'll start typing A and put auto in here. And let's see what it does. And there it goes. It took a little time to do it. But what margin auto is putting margin on either side of body. Remember, margin is on the outside and padding is on the inside. So we're going to want padding on the inside here. We're going to want padding in here, so we have space inside here. And it's actually not going to be in body, and I'll show you what happens when we do that. But we want margin on the outside, left and right. We don't want any on the top and bottom, but when we use auto, there's no center. You can't just center body. What you can do is you do margin auto, and it puts an auto amount of margin here and an auto here. Now, how much does it use? Well, it takes 800 pixels, and whatever's left over, it kind of puts an even amount on the other side. So it puts automatic margin on either side of the 800 pixels, no matter what you do. So when you shorten it, it keeps an auto margin on either side, which means it's always centered. So that's kind of a shortcut to kind of make it centered margin auto. So we're doing that with body. Now, if we want space inside here, that's called padding. Now, I just want to show something, because if we put padding inside here, if we go padding, and if we did padding all around, let's do something like 24 pixels, which is, maybe 1/3 of an inch or something like that. 24 times 3. Yeah, that's 1/3. I got it right. So 24 pixels, and if you want half of that, you can do whatever half of 72 is, 36. If you want more of like a 1/2 inch kind of look here, you could do that. We'll try that, see what that looks like. And go in here. And you can see what happened. It actually put, and it's going slow, but it put padding kind of around the picture too, which we do not want. And it's on the top too, it's all around. We don't want it around the picture. So when you use body, everything in body is getting the padding around it. Not around it, but it's kind of pushing everything in and it's creating padding. And we don't want that. And I might make this darker. That bisque, I might make it darker. So let me go back here and just go to the bisque. And again, you don't have to keep looking up colors. I'm just going to choose a darker color. And then I'll go here and refresh it. There we go. It's going real slow here, so that's a little darker. Now you see some more contrast. Actually, that looks pretty nice. But we don't want padding around the picture. We just want it around this part. So what is this part? Let's go back to our HTML. After the header where the picture is, a fall header, it's called section. So from section on down, and the whole thing we put in section, I believe, except for the footer. And let's just check this out. So let's see what the footer's doing. So everything's in there, and the footer is outside of the section. So we want to make sure that the footer also has the padding as well. So we could adjust that, and we can even take section down here, cut it. I did Command X on Windows, do Control X, and put section around everything. We'll see how that works. Let's see, how is section indented? It is indented, so let's tab it over. And we could see how that looks for now. So we can put it inside there, or we could have put a separate padding for footer as well, but let's see if that works. Let's see how that works if we put section around everything. And now if we go here, we should actually put this padding in section. So let's go here and target section, and it is a tag, so we'll target that. And I'll just cut this padding. I did Command X, Control X on Windows. Now I got a wavy line there. It means there's a problem. Just hover over it. It says it's empty. Well, we're going to fill it up, so it won't be empty for long. So now I'll put padding there. Let's check it out. And this is going real slow to update for some reason. I'm not sure why. But that looks pretty good. And, I'm pulling out some darker colors. I might want to lighten this a little bit. I think it's a little dark, but that looks okay. And we also have padding at the top here, which we may have too much. So we may not want as much padding at the top. We have 36 here. How would we fix that? Well, we have padding 36. That's all around. So when you just say padding all around. Now, one thing you could do is you could do 2 values and do top and bottom and left and right. So maybe we'll do like 12 pics and a space. You don't put comma, you put a space. And that would mean top and bottom, and this would mean left and right. So let's see what that looks like. So it finally updated. It's going real slow here. And that looks pretty good. That looks a little bit better. We have the same amount on the left and right. Not as much on the top. 12, 36 padding for section. And again, section starts after the header. So starting after the header here, we have 12 on the top and bottom, and we have 36 on the left and right. And I'm going to lighten the background color just a little bit. Just a little. And maybe I'll darken this just a little too. There, maybe I'll move it over a little bit. And I'll go here, I'll refresh. That looks a little better. This isn't too dark, this isn't too light. That looks okay. And we're going to start adjusting the colors in here as well. We'll adjust our headings, we'll adjust the spacing, we're going to put an image in here. So we're going to do more in part 2 of our ex1 lists and links. Actually, this exercise is ex2, but we're still working on our ex1 folder. So in here, we still have our ex1 folder. We just started building our style sheet, and this is our styles.css, and we have a declaration block for HTML, a declaration block for body, which has a background color, a width, margin auto, which centers it, and then we have a declaration block for section, which just puts some padding around there. So we're going to continue with this in part 2, because I don't want these videos to be too long, but this is kind of our start here. So we're at a good start. So we're going to keep working on this, and we'll continue exploring some more CSS with this in part 2.